Today, we look at an anomaly, a piece of the future that was lost in the deep. Discovery that suggests our ancestors held the keys to the universe in the palms of their hands only to let them slip away. There are moments in history when the past reaches forward and touches the future. When the veil between what was and what should not yet be grows thin, this is the story of such a moment. A story of bronze and starlight, of a machine that remembered the heavens when humanity had forgotten how to listen. Welcome back to Whispered Chronicles, echoes of forgotten lore. I am glad you have found your way back as we prepare to cross another threshold into the unknown. In the spring of 1901, a small crew of sponge divers from the Greek island of Symi were returning home from the North African coast. They had spent months harvesting the Mediterranean floor, their lungs trained to withstand depths that would crush lesser men. But on this journey, a storm caught them off guard. The winds howled, the seas churned. Captain Dimitrios Kondos ordered his crew to shelter near the tiny island of Antikythera, a jagged rock between Crete and the Peloponnese, a place where myths still whispered in the caves. When the storm passed, the divers descended to check their anchors. One of them, Elias Stadiatis, dropped into the blue twilight at nearly 200 feet. What he found there was not the sandy floor he expected. It was a graveyard, an acropolis of marble and bronze scattered across the seafloor like the broken dreams of gods. Statues lay half-buried in sand. Columns jutted upward like fingers reaching for a sun they would never see again. This was a shipwreck, ancient, enormous, and impossibly wealthy. The divers salvaged what they could: bronze limbs, marble torsos, amphorae still sealed with pitch. The haul was brought to the National Archaeological Museum in Athens, where scholars marveled at the artistry of the statues, the craftsmanship of a lost age. But among the treasures was something else, something that did not fit. A corroded lump of bronze and wood fused together by 2 millennia of salt and pressure. It was roughly the size of a shoebox. Unimpressive, easily ignored. And so it was ignored. For nearly a year, it sat in a corner of the museum, calcified and silent, while the marble gods drew all the attention. Until one day in 1902, when the lump split open, the wood had dried. The bronze had shifted. And from within the broken crust, something impossible revealed itself. Gears, dozens of them. Bronze gears, meshed together in intricate patterns, their teeth still sharp despite the centuries. Inscriptions in ancient Greek wound around the edges, dials and pointers. A mechanism, a machine. But this was not supposed to exist. Not here, not now. The shipwreck was dated to approximately 60 BCE, in the waning days of the Roman Republic. The world of Caesar and Cicero, the world of conquest and oratory, it was not a world of machines. For decades, the corroded device sat in quiet controversy. Archaeologists dismissed it as an anomaly, an astrolabe perhaps, a navigational tool, something simple, something explainable. But the gears kept whispering their secrets, and slowly, painstakingly, researchers began to listen. In the 1970s, a British physicist named Derek de Sala Price used X-ray imaging to peer inside the mechanism. What he found shattered the comfortable narratives of technological progress. This was not a simple device. It was a computer, an analog computer designed to model the cosmos. And it was more sophisticated than anything humanity would create again for over 1,000 years. Let us look inside. The Antikythera Mechanism contains more than 30 bronze gears, each one hand-cut with astonishing precision. The teeth on these gears measure just 1.3 millimeters in width. They are triangular, perfectly shaped to mesh without slipping. The craftsmanship required to create such gears would not be seen again, until the finest clockmakers of Renaissance Europe bent over their workbenches with magnifying lenses and infinite patience. But this machine predates those clocks by 14 centuries. At the heart of the mechanism is a gear train driven by a hand crank. Turn the crank, and the gears begin to move. Slowly, deliberately. Each gear represents a different celestial body. The sun, the moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, the 5 wandering stars known to the ancient Greeks. The gears are arranged in ratios that mirror the actual movements of these bodies across the sky. As the user turns the crank forward, the machine calculates the future positions of the planets. Turn it backward, and it recreates the past. It is a calendar, a planetarium, an eclipse predictor, all bound together in a bronze case no larger than a dictionary. But the true genius lies in the details. The moon does not orbit the Earth in a perfect circle. Its path is elliptical, its speed variable. Sometimes it moves faster, sometimes slower. For centuries, astronomers struggled to predict the moon's position with any accuracy. Yet the Antikythera Mechanism solved this problem using a pine-and-slot mechanism, a mechanical innovation that would not appear again until medieval Islamic astronomers rediscovered it over a millennium later. The machine tracked the metonic cycle, the 19-year period after which the phases of the moon repeat on the same calendar dates. It tracked the Saros cycle, the 18-year period used to predict eclipses. And it did all of this automatically, mechanically, without error. This was not magic. It was mathematics made manifest. The universe, compressed into a clockwork heart. Who could build such a thing? The question haunts every researcher who has studied the mechanism. The ship that carried it was traveling from the eastern Mediterranean, it's likely from Rhodes or Pergamon, toward Rome. It carried luxuries meant for wealthy Roman patrons. Art, wine, knowledge. The machine may have been a gift, treasure, a demonstration of Greek intellectual superiority in a world increasingly dominated by Roman swords. Two names rise from the depths of history. Two ghost architects who might have laid the foundations for this impossible device. First is Archimedes of Syracuse, the greatest mathematician and engineer of the ancient world. Archimedes died in 212 BCE, nearly a century and a half before the Antikythera ship sank. But ancient sources tell us that Archimedes built devices to model the heavens. Cicero himself, writing in the 1st century BC, describes seeing a bronze sphere constructed by Archimedes that reproduced the movements of the sun, moon, and planets. It was kept in Rome, a relic of conquest, a trophy taken after Syracuse fell to Roman legions. Could the Antikythera Mechanism be a descendant of Archimedes' designs? A refinement? An evolution? The second name is Hipparchus of Nicaea, the astronomer who discovered the precession of the equinoxes and created the first comprehensive star catalog. Hipparchus lived on the island of Rhodes in the 2nd century BCE. He was obsessed with precision, with measurement, with understanding the cosmos through numbers. The Antikythera Mechanism uses astronomical data consistent with Hipparchus's observations. The lunar theory encoded in its gears matches his. Calculations, roads, precision, gears. The pieces fit together like a puzzle carved from starlight. But here is the terrifying truth. The Antikythera Mechanism was not a singular miracle. It was part of a lineage. Ancient texts reference other such devices. Cicero mentions them. Ovid alludes to them. There were workshops, schools of thought, a technological tradition that built machines to touch the heavens, and then it vanished. Imagine, for a moment, that the world did not progress in a straight line. That the trajectory of human knowledge is not an arrow but a spiral, rising and falling with the tides of history. The ancient Greeks stood at a summit. They held tools of bronze and insight that allowed them to decode the universe. They built water clocks and screw pumps and steam-powered toys. They mapped the stars and measured the Earth's circumference with startling accuracy. And then the light went out. By the 4th century CE, the knowledge that produced the Antikythera Mechanism had faded into myth. The great libraries burned. The schools closed. The Roman Empire, once the patron of Greek learning, fractured under the weight of its own ambition. Christianity spread, and with it, a new focus turned inward, toward the soul, rather than the stars. The cosmos became the domain of God, not gears. The next mechanical clock would not appear until 1386 CE in Salisbury Cathedral in England. 14 centuries of silence. 14 centuries in which humanity forgot how to build machines that remember. This is the 1,500-year gap. The Janus threshold. The moment when one age closed and another darker age began. Historians call it the fall of Rome, the end of antiquity. But perhaps it was something more. Perhaps it was the moment when humanity looked away from the stars and forgot that we once held them in our hands. Why did this happen? Why did the knowledge die? Some say it was war. The endless grinding wars that turned the Mediterranean into a charnel house. Others say it was religion, the rise of faiths that saw the material world as a distraction from the divine. Still others whisper of something darker, a deliberate suppression. A fear that such knowledge in the wrong hands could shatter the fragile order of things. Or perhaps it was simply neglect. Perhaps the workshops that built these devices were small. The knowledge passed from master to apprentice in quiet rooms. And when those masters died, when the apprentices turned to other trades, the knowledge died with them, not with a scream, but with a whisper. The Antikythera Mechanism was pulled from the sea in fragments, corroded, incomplete. Modern researchers estimate that less than a third of the original device survives. The rest is lost, dissolved into the Mediterranean, scattered across the seafloor in pieces too small to find. What we have is enough to know what we have lost. In 2006, an international team of researchers used advanced imaging technology to map every surviving fragment of the mechanism. They reconstructed its gears, decoded its inscriptions, traced the paths of its pointers across imagined dials. They built replicas that work, that turn, that calculate the positions of planets with eerie accuracy. And in those replicas, they found something haunting. The mechanism was not just functional, it was beautiful. The gears were not hidden away inside a plain bronze box. They were visible through windows, their movements choreographed like dancers. The inscriptions that covered the device were not instructions, but poetry. Descriptions of the cosmos written in language that sang. This was not a tool, it was a hymn, prayer made of bronze and mathematics. A way of holding the universe close and saying, "We understand you. We see your patterns. We are part of your dance." Today, the fragments of the Antikythera Mechanism rest in climate-controlled cases in Athens. Tourists file past them, marveling at the complexity, snapping photographs, moving on to the next exhibit. But few truly grasp what they are seeing. Few understand that they are standing before an incursion, a piece of the future found in the deep past. The mechanism raises questions we are only beginning to ask. What else lies at the bottom of the sea? What other ships carry devices we cannot imagine, now dissolved into sand and salt? How many times has humanity climbed this mountain, only to fall back into darkness? There is a fragility to progress, a brittleness we do not like to acknowledge. We assume that knowledge once gained cannot be lost. We assume that the arc of history bends toward enlightenment. But the Antikythera Mechanism tells a different story. It tells us that we have been here before, that we have touched the stars and then forgotten the way. And it tells us that forgetting is easy. Empires fall, libraries burn, the sea claims its tributes. The machines that once calculated the heavens become corroded lumps. Ignored for a year in a museum corner, there is a theory, whispered in academic circles, that the Antikythera Mechanism was not the pinnacle of ancient technology, but merely an example. That somewhere in the archives of lost history, there were devices even more sophisticated, machines that measured time with atomic precision, automata that moved with lifelike grace, computers that calculated not just the stars, but the tides of human affairs. We will never know. The evidence is gone. It's melted down for scrap, buried in unmarked graves, resting in the trenches of the Mediterranean, where the pressure is too great and the darkness too complete for human hands to reach. But sometimes, when the light is right and the water is calm, divers find things. Bronze fragments, gear, teeth, inscriptions that hint at knowledge we thought was new. The sea is patient. The sea remembers. The stars still turn in their ancient patterns. The moon waxes and wanes. The planets wander their elliptical paths, indifferent to whether we watch them or not. The cosmos does not care if we build machines to understand it. The gears do not need us to remember them, but we need to remember. Because the Antikythera Mechanism is not just a relic, it is a warning, a reminder that progress is not inevitable, that the knowledge we build today could be lost tomorrow, that the machines we take for granted could become mysteries to our descendants. Corroded lumps in the wreckage of our civilization stand now at another summit. Our computers do not run on bronze gears, but on silicon and electricity. We have built machines that calculate faster than thought, that connect minds across continents, that touch the cosmos in ways the ancient Greeks could only dream of. But we must ask ourselves, are we building to last? Are we passing this knowledge forward, teaching the next generation not just how to use these machines, but how to understand them? Or are we, like the Greeks, building wonders that will one day be forgotten? Mysteries to be rediscovered by future divers sifting through the wreckage of our age? The Antikythera Mechanism is still teaching us, still whispering its secrets. And perhaps the greatest secret is this, that humanity's greatest enemy is not ignorance, but forgetting. Not the failure to learn, but the failure to remember. The gears still wait in the dark, in museums, in the deep, in the forgotten corners of history. And they are asking us a question. Will we listen? Will we remember? Will we build machines that outlast empires, that carry our knowledge forward through the storms and shipwrecks of time? Or will we, like the Greeks, let the gears fall silent, let the stars turn unwatched, the machines slip back into the sea? The stars still turn in their ancient patterns. The gears still wait in the dark. The question is, will we be ready when the machine starts turning again? Thank you for listening to Whispered Chronicles, Echoes of Forgotten Lore. If you wish to hear more stories buried beneath history's surface, be sure to subscribe. Until next time, stay curious and stay safe.